We got quick Dick McDick. I pulled him away from a fencing task, as you can see, and I've got him on to chat with us. So thanks a lot for joining us today. I've really been looking forward to this.
Hey, Corey. Yeah, good to see you, man. It's there's never a dull moment around here. It's hard to get to everybody, but yeah, thanks for having me on, man.
Oh, well, that's a lot of, like what you've built. I mean, for those who aren't familiar with you, that most of our viewers are, you're a person working in the ag industry. You're out in Saskatchewan, and you put together a lot of fantastic videos and commentary that I think really helps bring home the challenges of working in the agricultural sector, without bitching about it and adding some humor to the whole thing. It's just kind of drives it home to people who aren't familiar with it.
Yeah, well, I think I bitch about it sometimes too, but I think we're all guilty of that a little bit. You know what I mean? But yeah, well, I appreciate that, and I try and do what I can to show people what it's like out here firsthand. We can listen to a lot of seminars and listen to a lot of podcasts and everything, but I think a really unique way to connect with audiences nowadays is to visually show people what we do, and I think it helps for people to be able to draw a parallel to some of the work that goes into, agriculture and maybe some things that happen in oil and gas. And hell, sometimes we just go and do stuff that has nothing to do with anything. We just try and laugh a little bit, right? So.
Well, that's it. I mean, I'm going to segue this into a little bit of what I want to talk about. So you kind of grew up in an agricultural environment. You ended up taking off to the oil field for a while and put some time in there. And then you kind of migrated back to the ag sector. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's exactly. I did. So I grew up in more on the cow-calf production side of agriculture. And then, I did 19 years oil and gas in northern Alberta. And that took me all over to northern BC, the Northwest Territories, Yukon, Arctic Circle. And then wound up coming back home here. It would be close to 4 years ago here now. And I'm back in the ag here now. Working with another much larger farmer than I am myself, and getting back into cattle and learning a lot on the grain side here now too.
Right on. So and that's what happened is you came back, but I mean, what I wanted to talk about was that changing demographic, and I mentioned it earlier. We've had a report recently so we're expecting 40% of current ag producers to retire within the next 10 years, and a lot of the younger generation isn't kind of taking up the horns on that. It's like we might end up with quite a crisis for producers very soon.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to look at it, and I always look at a lot of these reports that come out, especially when it's from RBC, but especially they were talking about the amount of foreign workers that we'd have to come in to take up the reins or have people migrate to Canada. A lot of that has to do with with the horticulture side of agriculture, that's the greenhouses and your lettuce and carrots and tomatoes and everything. A lot of that's very, labor intensive. I think there's a lot of different processes that are happening nowadays to try and take some of the labor intensive processes out of it, which happens with agriculture all over the place. We're more into the oil seeds and cereals part of agriculture here, and obviously the beef industry. We face a little bit different of a set of challenges though here. I think there's a labor shortage and people retiring. Doesn't mean that agriculture is going to go anywhere, but I think what we share commonly throughout agriculture in Canada is large corporations coming in to invest and taking away some opportunity for younger people that are interested in getting into agriculture to be able to do it. Like you take myself for example. I was lucky enough that I bought some land years ago, and I had some land here and was ready to come back and take that land over from the people that were renting it from me. But still, your investment into equipment and technology and fertilizers and everything else, especially if you're getting into cattle, to buy into your cattle herd and everything is insane, right? So go figure. I'm getting a low battery warning. But it's just it takes a lot of money, and if you don't have land, you're not going to do any of it. And when we have, whether it be foreign investment companies or local investment companies here in Saskatchewan, we've got Angelic and Manette's that are big corporate farms that are starting to own a lot of the land. And when a lot of the land's prices start going up and up and up, and they come in and start paying a little more for rent, and then they can artificially kind of inflate the price of their land just because they own so much of it. So if they buy a quarter section next to them for 3/4 more than what the average person would pay for it, all the land that they own around it artificially goes up in value as well. So there's some big challenges, and I think a lot of people don't realize, the catalyst that's fueling these challenges.
Yeah, well, it's a huge capital investment if somebody were to try and come from outside and get into something like that. And kind of as you pointed out too, I mean, the days of the little subsistence romantic, subsistence farm for a family to run are sort of long gone now. You've got to run a large
Hmm.
enterprise, and with modern equipment, and that's part of it. Is a smaller labor pool can really maintain a much larger amount of fields, but again, you need some very
Yeah.
advanced training and advanced equipment and chemicals in order to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll take it down a little bit different of an alley here too. Is another challenge I feel that we face is technology is going to continue to advance. I've done a few talks on this at some different ag shows and stuff, and when we see like where spraying's going and autonomy and self-driving tractors and combines and all this stuff, there's nobody out here that's against that because it helps. You know, if you have an operation that only has 5 employees and you want to take on a little bit more land to try and help pay for some of the equipment that you've got, no one's against it because it's one less head that you might need running it, which is fine. But the people that you do get, I mean, the quality labor is something that is lacking. People contributed to, you know, they don't pay enough in agriculture. There's not enough money there for it. I don't see that. Where we are, hired labor is well compensated for what they do out here. I think it's what we see with the whole scope of labor in general in Canada and our new world here is that you got to get out of bed at 6 in the morning and you are actually going to have to go and physically work for your money. And I believe that we have a generation of people coming up to take over this generation that we have right now that are afraid of hard physical labor. And that's a problem. And that's where you see the people that are in the horticulture industry and in your fruits and vegetables that is hard physical labor. And in my opinion, which I mean, take it as you will, that's why we see a lot of temporary foreign workers coming into Canada because these are people that are not afraid of hard work, you know? And I mean, that's just my toonie. I'm sure a lot of people disagree with me on that, but it's what I see from the boots on the ground perspective, right?
Well, I think it's a fantastic point. I mean, I was in the oil field for 20 years as well. And I mean, back then, that was the days of, 10, 12-hour shifts, 7 days a week, month at a time till you get home. But now we've
Hmm.
got a generation that's talking about going on to a 4-day work week because 40 hours is too much to put in. Uh,
Yeah,
finding
that's well,
somebody to,
that's right. But there, like, there's another side to it too, Corey. Like, I mean, our government policy, like, it decentivizes you to work harder. The more money you make, the more taxes you have to pay. The more you go into a higher tax bracket. And when you look at clawbacks of what happens in the Canadian economy, we're slowly taking away the incentive for people to work harder. Like, there's an actual monetized incentive for you to work harder, and if that's taken away, well, I mean, I listen here. I'm going to pick this up and show you where I'm at here right now. Like, I mean, I'm out here in basically the middle of nowhere, putting in an extremely expensive fence right now. Uh, but I'm here because I love it, but it needs to be done because it's what I need to get done as well. I wouldn't expect somebody that's coming out here to work for me to have to love it. I just need to pay them for their time to be here, and that being, you know, contrary to me having that requirement of them, I require them to be here to do what I'm paying them to do. I mean, to me, it's a simple transaction, but we just live in a society where I need to be beholden to the person that's here. We should just have a contractual agreement that, hey, we're here to get a job done. Let's love it. Let's do it. And let's go on from there. Right.
well, yeah, and it's a business like any other. Well, it's not like any other. That's part of the problem, though. I mean, it's got some seasonal highs and lows. It's got times where you're working like crazy, times where it's only moderately working, and that makes it
Yeah.
difficult for staffing as well. I mean, when you have to take them for certain periods, I mean, that's where you put in a bunch of overtime. They get gouged on their check, as you say, and then later on when it's a little slower, well, maybe they could have used that money then. Speaking of taxes, though, you put out a great video. You've talked about that a couple of times. I mean, the pressures that are coming on for producers, people are screaming at producers, they're screaming at retailers as to why the costs of food are going up, but they're forgetting that the government is really contributing to the cost, and the carbon tax is a big one.
Yeah, it really is. And I think that's what I tried to illustrate in my last carbon tax video. I've tried to illustrate it in all of them, but it just seems to go to the wayside. And you have a lot of people fight the point that even though, so we're waiting on Bill C-234 to receive royal assent. It's got to pass the Senate here once more before it receives royal assent. And that would exempt farm operations in Canada that don't have their own carbon pricing structure, which, I mean, basically is just Quebec because they don't have one, and BC because they have their own that doesn't work. But that would exempt natural gas and propane on farm use that we use to heat our barns, dry grain, all that good stuff, right? Well, we still pay a carbon tax on our electricity here in Saskatchewan, which we need to do all the said above things and to run our bin fans and to do everything else that we do on an operation. But anything that we bring in third party to the farm or anything that we ship third party from the farm are all like subject to carbon tax. So if we're having grain hauled out or fertilizer hauled in, we get a charge passed on to us from that fuel because it's a commercial operation bringing the fertilizer to the farm. Then take that back a step to the fertilizer that's in the trailer. Well, the manufacturers that CFL, say, in Medicine Hat, that have manufactured the fertilizer, they're not exempt from a carbon tax. They use a lot of natural gas to make NH3 and different fertilizers. And look at Nutrien here in Saskatchewan, who mine potash. All these places are charged carbon taxes, and that just comes down to their price, which gets passed on to us. And then when the product is done and grown and shipped away from the farm here, it turns commercial again as soon as it's out of our hands. And so that we are price takers on this side, we're price takers on this side. And then if you take the produced side of what we grow here on farms and send that down to the consumer that's in the grocery store, from the time it leaves the farm to the time it gets home in their, of course, non-reusable plastic bags that don't exist anymore, to their kitchen, each step of the way that that food is taken since it's left the farm is subject to a carbon tax, and nobody talks about it.
No, they got to understand. They listen to that myopic. Oh no, but I got a rebate and it's a revenue neutral thing. Well, no, you're paying for it, guys. You might not realize it, but you're paying for it.
It's just not a line item, and that's a problem. I'd love to see a line item everywhere on a receipt that we get that shows here's how much carbon tax it was, because we get that passed on to us as producers, and you'll see that in a lot of other places too, where you'll see a fuel surcharge and a carbon tax surcharge line itemized on a bill, because transport companies can't afford to absorb this cost. Carbon tax drives up the price of everything that they're buying to make their business work as well. They can't afford to take it, and they're competing in a market for lower and lower and lower rates when the cost of carbon tax keeps driving your fuel up and up and up. Like it's a terrible, terrible tool, if that's what you want to call it.
Yeah, well, and taxes are kind of dry talk, and we get economists on or things like that. I get Franco on the show to talk about that, but it kind of makes the people's eyes glaze. I'm kind of bringing that back around, and what I appreciate out of you, though, is at least you bring it into some language, drive it home to where it's really happening, but where it's palatable. I just wanted to bring up, I know you probably see it's more of a novelty show, but like, for example, that Clarkson's Farm with Jeremy Clarkson out in England. I mean, it's just kind of a play, almost exaggerated reality TV, but he really does illustrate actually how bureaucracy can really hinder producers from getting creative or doing different things. And I think that it kind of applies all over the place. People forget too that there is a lot of hoops and regulation. It's not like you guys can just have free run and do whatever the hell you want out there. Like, you got a lot of stuff to cover.
Yeah, it's what I tried to make up one point in the fertilizer ban video that I did, is like, does everybody think we're just out here with nitrogen trying to like sell it like a drug dealer to our crop? Yeah, I know you don't need it, but how about you have a little taste instead and just see how things go? I mean, there's a very specific amount of fertilizer that you can apply to a crop. Everyone thinks that the more fertilizer you throw at a crop, the better it's going to do, which is completely the opposite. You can actually overgrow a crop and it'll lodge and fall to the ground, and you won't be able to pick it up, and you'll cost yourself hundreds of thousands of dollars. You can deal with seed burn if you put too much down at one time. And people that are actually professional farmers, I mean, I rely on a lot of professionals to help me do what I do. They're going to be laughing at me right now. They're like, you haven't even touched half the points, but like, it's an endless sea of perfection that it takes to grow a crop. And then if you do everything right on your end, you're still relying on Mother Nature to hopefully rain or hopefully be a dry fall. And we never get that. We never get that option.
No, and I mean, it's also like pointing out that with professional drivers who are paying carbon taxes, they can't reduce burning, fuel. They have to. It's part of their job. And they were never burning more than they had to. That's just throwing money away. You guys aren't going to throw fertilizer away.
Yeah, so that's the thing, Corey. And like in my oil field career, I was very involved in transportation, and where everyone's like, oh, well, just reduce. I'm like, fuel is your biggest cost as a transportation company. You already do everything you can to reduce your fuel usage. Right from, we had non-idle bonuses for our drivers, and we would work on wheel hub covers, and we would work on aerodynamic trailers to reduce wind drag. We would do absolutely everything we could to be as efficient as possible without a carbon tax. It's your goal. It's the same with farming. It's the same with everything. These things cost money. And if you run a successful business, your goal is to have the least amount of input with the most amount of profit from what you've grown or your product that you sell to your customer. You don't need a carbon tax to make it happen.
No, it's not an unreasonable goal. Well, I mean, that time went quick there. I'm really glad you came on. I want to close with a few other things. So I noticed, for example, geez, you do some other things. You do some charities. You shaved your beard off the other year. Holy crap, look at that thing go. I mean, I got beard envy going on. I mean, the hair on my back's growing faster with age, but I still can't grow a beard to save my life.
You know, if I could grow crops as good as I can grow a beard, I probably wouldn't have to worry so much when I go to visit the banker. But yeah, it seems to grow good, and yeah, definitely, we've definitely got some hair going on again here now. But it's no, I've had a really good opportunity. Sorry, just low battery warning, the last one that you get. I've had a really good opportunity to be able to work with a few charities and to bring some attention to some different organizations. I'm very honored and humbled to be able to have the opportunity to do that. And the point of this whole thing is for everybody to just have a good time and keep laughing. So hopefully we can keep that going and see where things go.
We got to keep laughing, or we'll truly lose it all. That's for sure. And you
Hey,
bring a lot of
sometimes things are so bad, there's nothing left to do but laugh at them, man.
Oh, so just before I let you go, then, are there any events you got coming up, and where channels can people find you for to see?
Oh man, yeah. So I'm Quick Dick McDick on YouTube. Be careful when you Google that; it can take you to some websites I'm not affiliated with whatsoever. Uh, Quick Dick McDick on Twitter, on Facebook, on TikTok. QD McDick on Instagram, just because apparently they won't let me have that name on Instagram for some reason. And quickdickmcdick.ca. Man, I'm going to be all over the place. I'm booked up right until 2024, trying to get a show list on my website there where I'll be doing stand-up comedy. And if people want to come and check it out, we're usually raising some money for some good organizations while we do it. So
awesome. We'll have to get out and catch one of those shows in person. Well, thanks
yeah,
for
for
taking
sure.
the time to talk to us today. I'll let you get back to your fencing. Try not to nail your thumb if you can avoid it. And I hope we get the chance to talk again soon.
I'll do what I can. Thanks for the chat, Corey. Take care of yourself, man.
Here's an update on commodity prices in Lethbridge for today. Cash barley is steady at $4.20. Feed wheat is down $2 at $4.15. And corn is also down $2 at $411 per ton. In the milling wheat markets, May Minneapolis futures are lower 7.5 cents at $8.48 and a quarter, with local hard red spring bid for April movement at $10.20 per bushel. Looking at canola, nearby futures slipped 90 cents at $7.58.70 per ton, with delivered values for April-May movement at $16.98 per bushel. In the pulse markets, nearby red lentil prices are lower 0.5 cent at 34.5 cents per pound, and yellow peas remain at $12 per bushel. And in the cattle markets, June live cattle are lower 33 cents at $164.03 per hundredweight. For more information on pricing or picked up options, give me a call at 403-394-1711. I'm Matt Musicum at Marketplace Commodities. Accurate real-time marketing information and pricing options.
You can become a Western Standard member for just $10 a month or $99 a year for unlimited access.